Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. So obviously, as you guys can tell, I am doing a Bible study today, which I am super excited for, considering that I've been working on Genesis, the actual Bible study, for a while now, and I just haven't finished it. I put it on hold a while ago and just never picked it up again. But as of today, I am continuing Genesis, and I have a goal of finishing it. I don't exactly know when, because I don't have a set schedule of when I'm going to be doing Bible studies. I can say one thing right now, and it can completely change next week or the week after that. So I'm not going to set in stone when I'm going to do a Bible study. I will just tell you this: like, if for some reason I do not have a video to post for that week, I will be doing a Bible study. So like, normally I will have a video about, like, some of my previous videos. I did a video on fasting, I did a video on self-discipline, and this week I just did not have a video. So I decided to go ahead and do a deep dive into Genesis 39. I left off on Genesis 38. So if you've not seen my previous Bible studies of Genesis, go ahead and check in the description below, or go to the end of the video and I will have a playlist somewhere on the screen here for you guys to check it out, along with my John Bible study, which is complete, by the way. That one is complete. Now, it might be complete in the aspect that I'm completely done with the chapter. I've already read all the way through it. I've already done the Bible study, but that does not mean it's complete in the fact that I might not go back and add additional notes to it, because no matter how many times you read a book, if you read it once, you read a second time, you're gonna come up with more notes. You're gonna come up with more. You're gonna learn something else new every single time you read it. So I might have already read it once. I've already gone through it already completely, but that doesn't mean that I might not go through it again a second time and learn something else, and then come up with notes for that. So as it stands right now, John is complete. But that does not mean I'm done making videos on the book of John and putting more into it, on note-wise. So, temporarily, John is complete. It'll be on the screen as well for you guys to go take a look at that if you guys want to. But I am intending on finishing Genesis this year. So, we are going to go into Genesis 39 on Joseph and Potiphar's wife. So, if you guys have not seen my previous chapters, then you guys will not know that I normally read from the ESV version, and I take a ton of notes, like a ton. I include a lot of notes into my chapter, sticky notes, as you guys can tell. I glue in a lot. I use a lot of color. So I'm just giving you guys a real quick scan through of my actual book right now, but a lot of colors. And I glue in pages. I literally glue in pages, because I run, as you guys can tell, I write a lot of notes, and then I run out of space. Like these would have never fit on my page here. And if I tried putting these on here, I'd be covering up the text, which I don't really want to do. So, like, that one's fine, because I don't have any other notes for that one right now. But, like, this one was not going to fit. I still have more notes, so I can put more notes on the back of these. This one's just kind of loose. But look at that. That is tons of notes. That is chaotic. But for someone like me, I know what I'm reading because I wrote them. Like, no, don't lose that. Stay in there. Like, that would have never fit into my book, my Bible, if I wrote that. But yeah, I like to get creative with my Bible. I like to make it colorful. I have not gotten colorful in the last sections here, as you guys can tell. I need to go back and actually add more color to these, because I like the color. It really makes things pop for me. Like, That's one of the reasons why I like to use the colorful pages like these. You're gonna ruin my page. Alright, here we go. There's my notes from chapter 39. As you guys can tell, I have some notes on the side here and more notes on the side. Alright, so the way I do my Bible study, I'm going to read the chapter all the way through, and then I will go over the notes I have and then the side notes and just kind of give you guys an overview of what the chapter is really about. So yeah, and it's really not that long either. Whoops. There's only 23 verses in this chapter. So let's just go ahead and get into this chapter, and I will go ahead and read it for you guys. Alright, so now we're going into Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer. He made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife." Okay. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her or be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. And then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came into me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house." As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and he showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. And there you have it. That is chapter 39. So overall, as you guys can tell by if you guys have already seen, like maybe seen the movie or even watched some of the cartoons, this was basically just Joseph and Potiphar's wife trying to seduce him into sleeping with her, and he fled and he ended up in prison because she lied to her husband about him. That's essentially what the whole chapter is about. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and go into the chapter little by little down the notes I have here. So, before I get into the actual notes, I want to point out something of like where I got most of these notes from. And a lot of my notes in my entire Bible in general come from a website called Blue Letter Bible. And it is a in-depth study of the chapter by chapter, book by book. And it goes into everything. It goes into numbers, it goes into references, it goes into history, and it is so in depth of when you're doing the chapter by chapter, which is the reason why I have so many notes on all my pages. Most of my notes come from Blue Letter Bible because it gives you so much information, and that's where a lot of these notes came from. So the first one I have here, okay, is going into God blessing Potiphar's house. And because of God's blessing and Joseph's faithfulness, God made sure Joseph was advanced in position in Potiphar's house, even as a slave. So Joseph rose to the top, but it took a while for that to happen. Okay, Joseph was 17 when he was sold into slavery. So that was from 37 to, and then he was 30 when Pharaoh promoted him, and that's in the future one in chapter 41, verse 46. Okay, and then he was a prisoner. He was a prisoner before his promotion for 2 years in 41, 1, which that's coming up soon. Okay, and then Joseph was in Potiphar's house here for 11 years. Okay, so 11 years, which kind of goes into this one note here I have where the Lord blessed Potiphar's house because of Joseph, and that kind of proved the fact that he was a servant, a slave, what do you want to call it, in Potiphar's house for 11 years. So he was a really hard worker because Potiphar obviously trusted him enough to make him overseer of his house, and he learned the Egyptian ways. I mean, you kind of have to if you've been in a house for 11 years. So Potiphar obviously saw, as it said, he saw that God was with Joseph. He made him overseer of the house. He learned the ways of the Egyptians. He was a hard worker, and he trusted him. Okay, but then we go into Potiphar's wife, who we don't even know her name or anything. Okay, but she was undeniably forward with Joseph about wanting to sleep with him. And while it doesn't exactly say in the actual Bible here of whether or not Potiphar was a castrated eunuch, but one can assume that he probably is because his wife was obviously looking for sexual activity elsewhere. Okay, and that's why she was looking to Joseph, because it also on top of it too, it also says that he was extremely good looking and she was hounding him day after day after day. Okay, now the other reason why I say he was a castrated eunuch as well is because, or at least a possible castrated eunuch, is because Blue Letter Bible also has a reference to that. I mean, I will have a link to that description before for Genesis chapter 39 if you guys want to take a look at it and go more into depth of it. But I just kind of took a brief note on that. Okay, and then we go into the fact that, okay, obviously, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so she was trying and hounding him day after day after day, trying to get him to sleep with her, and he, because he was faithful servant to not only his master but also to the Lord, and he knew that sleeping with his master's wife was a sin and against God's word and just really not a good thing, he kept denying her time after time and time again. Okay, so that's where Potiphar's anger comes in, because Potiphar's wife lied. Okay, so when he was in their house with her by himself, which, no offense to him, that was automatically a stupid move to do in the first place, but he did. Probably because he didn't think she would actually do something like that, okay? And I can understand that part. But she did. she tried coming on to him, and he fled the house from her, and unfortunately he left behind his garment, which she used against him. And that stirred up Potiphar's anger. And more than likely, that only stirred up his anger because he knew that her accusation against Joseph was not true. But unfortunately, there was nothing he can do about it because she had his garment, and it was her word against his. Not a whole lot he can do. Okay. This one here is just this one thing is this little note is just a little additional information I have about God speaks through dreams, and I have these bunch of different verses throughout the Bible of how God speaks through dreams, and this was just one of those things that kind of tied into it. So now I want to go into the actual notes I have on the side here. Okay. So I have Potiphar, which means devoted to the sun. And he was an officer, which means eunuch. So that's another reason why I have the casual eunuch here. To one who was castrated. Okay. He was an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. So basically, he was a chief of police, but an officer of Pharaoh usually are eunuchs, ones who are castrated. So that's, I should have put like a note saying like C verse, something like that, but that answers that question of like how I knew that he was a castrated eunuch. Okay, and goes into the captain guard. An Egyptian had bought. He was bought as a slave. Okay, down to the Lord was with Joseph. So obviously God did not abandon Joseph. Okay, he didn't abandon him. He was with him the whole entire time, and he became a successful man. So God overruled the evil to accomplish his eternal purpose. Okay, he's using this whole entire plan, this whole entire thing of his brothers selling him into slavery, into Potiphar's house, going into Pharaoh's kingdom, Pharaoh's household, and so on and so on. This becomes into a much bigger picture. If you guys have not read Genesis at all, or if you guys have not seen Prince of Egypt, the Dreams one, Joseph, Prince of Dreams, there's a much bigger picture to this that will continue on into the rest of the book than just this little section here. Okay, so God had made him a successful man for his purpose because he had a much bigger plan for him. Okay, and his master saw that the Lord was with him. Okay, like I said, there's a lot of notes in here. Okay. And by this trust in God, diligent worker, God was shown to be real to Potiphar. And he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. So even as a slave, Joseph advanced in position. Okay, and then of course, it says, all the left in charge. Because of him, he had no concern. And then he even brings it up to when he spoke to the wife. He said, he is in greater... Yeah, here he goes. He says, behold, anything in this house, he has put me in charge of anything. So he's basically literally saying that his master, Potiphar, has no concern. So this really shows the trust relationship between Potiphar and Joseph. He really worked his butt off to prove to his master that he was a hardworking guy, that he had learned the ways of the Egyptian, that he was someone that he can be trusted, and God was with him the entire time. So there was a trust relationship between the two of them. But his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. And I have that highlighted in black because on my color code system, black means sin, evil, bad. And that is, well, she's trying to get him to sleep with her even though she's married, okay? So she has literally sinning. And then we go into Joseph's faithfulness and his respect towards his master, saying that he's not going to do this because he's his master. He's in charge of the household, but he's left him in charge for when he's away, and he has not kept anything from Joseph except for the fact that she's his wife. Okay? And then he's asking her a question like, how can I do this wickedness and sin against God? And then he calls it, he's literally calling it for what it is. It's sinning against not only God, but it's also sinning against Potiphar, because Potiphar is literally her husband. Let me zoom in for a little bit, guys. There you guys go. Oops. There you guys go. Okay. And then she spoke to Joseph day after day, would not listen to her because, or to lie by with her or be with her. Again, this is another way of saying that she sinned. Same thing as she caught him by the garment, saying, lie with me. So more sin that was taken into this. And Joseph showed remarkable faithfulness towards God and Potiphar by refusing to give in to her advances. And she had planned for them to be alone and trapped him because none of the men were in the household. One of them one day went to the household and went to the house to do his work, and none of the men were in there. So this is literally just her way of trying to trap him. She was just trying to trick him, and she was just trying to get him alone and actually, well, commit the sin that she was trying to do. But Joseph had the right idea, okay? He fled the house. He fled from her advances, and he stayed faithful. Unfortunately, he did leave behind his garment, and she turned the tables on him. She called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Okay. So she knew his life was cheap, because here, one of the notes I have here. Okay. A Hebrew, the Hebrew servant. So the life of a Hebrew slave, or the life of a slave in general, is especially cheap, and punishment is death. Okay, Potiphar's wife knew her accusation would mean a death sentence for Joseph, which is why she did not use his name, and she referred to him as just merely a Hebrew servant. She did not want to think of him as a real person. Okay, so going back to this real quick. So yeah, that's why she said a Hebrew. Okay. And then she says the exact same thing down here. The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us. Okay. This is just her way of ignoring the fact that he's a real person, ignoring the fact that of what she was doing, and just referring to him as nothing more than just a slave, because it's so much easier to refer to someone as a slave and not a real person than acknowledging the fact that they're a real person with feelings and that what you're doing is wrong. Okay? So she goes into the fact that he's a slave, and it says, as soon as his master heard the words, and this is referring to Potiphar, obviously, okay, his anger was kindled, and Joseph's master took him into the prison. Okay. That Potiphar had believed his wife. If Potiphar had believed what his wife had done, if he had actually believed what that I cannot talk right now. If Potiphar had actually truly believed that Joseph did this thing that she claims that he did, he would have not gone to prison. He would have just been killed automatically. Okay, he would have died. Okay, so that is why I am of the mindset and got the idea that of this note here of Potiphar's anger came because he knew that her accusation against Joseph was not true, but there was nothing he can do about it because she made the accusation. She had already said that he had tried to sleep with her, that he had tried to force himself on her, but he knew that was not true because he trusted him. There's a trust relationship with them. And as I said, if he had actually believed that that this accusation was done, he would have died. He would have had him killed and not just put into prison. Okay. So he went from privileged prison, but God was still with them, obviously, as you guys can tell, because like where is it? King's prisoners were confined, and there he was in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So just like Potiphar, the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Okay, because this is because God was with Potiphar. Okay. Potiphar knew what kind of woman his wife was, and he knew what kind of man Joseph was, but this whole entire thing was planned out already. This had to happen in order for Potiphar to meet Pharaoh, in order for Potiphar, or not Potiphar to meet Pharaoh, in order for Joseph to meet Pharaoh, in order for Joseph to get into Pharaoh's good grace, for Pharaoh to promote Joseph into the standard that he was at. This whole entire thing, this is all planned out, and it was supposed to happen. So even though Potiphar knew what kind of woman his wife was and what kind of person Joseph was, this was what God's plan was. Okay, this is what God had planned for it to happen. This is what God wanted to happen, because again, this is a much bigger picture. When it comes to Bible studying, you might be going by chapter, but ultimately you have to look at the bigger picture, not just at this small picture here. This is one small section of this entire story, and there's a much bigger, broader picture to this than just this little incident. Okay, this incident here leads up to Joseph's position in Pharaoh's household, in Pharaoh's kingdom, and ultimately will lead to him saving not only all of Egypt, but saving his brothers and his family and his father from a terrible famine that's gonna be coming. And that was God's plan from the get-go. That's the reason why he had these dreams. That's the reason why he had why his brothers sold him into slavery. All of this was planned out. So regardless of what Potiphar's wife did, and regardless of what Potiphar knew, this was still going to be the outcome of it. Okay, so just like Potiphar, the keeper of the prison appointed Joseph in charge of the prison because God was with him, and whatever was done in the prison was because Joseph was the one who did it. And the keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made succeed. Okay, so regardless of this whole entire thing, God was with him. And just a reminder, okay, he was in the household for 11 years. So from this point up until him being in prison, 11 years. Okay, then he was in prison for 2 years. Okay, he started out when he was 17, and then he is about 30 by the time Pharaoh promotes him in chapter 41 here. Okay, so I know it's a little bit all over the place when it comes to this chapter, and I hope you guys were able to keep up with my chaotic notes and whatnot. Sometimes it's kind of hard to read some of the notes that are on the side here. Okay, like I had a note here that said he left his outer garment, not his underwear, and he was not naked. He just left like his outer garment, kind of like a shirt, kind of thing. But a lot of my notes are all over the place, and it's kind of hard to read some of them. But that is the gist of chapter 39. Okay. We'll go into chapter 40, which is Joseph interprets the two prisoners' dreams coming up. I'm not exactly sure when I'll get into that, but I also do want to make sure I am on top of all of my notes, and I want to color code some of these things too. So, yeah. Anyways, if you have any comments or questions about today's Bible study, or just want me to go into something a little more in depth, or whatever the case is, let me know, and I will do that, and I'll maybe do a short on that as well. But ultimately, that is all the notes I have for chapter 39. I do want to read this little section here for you guys. Throughout my Bible, I have these little, I don't even know what they're called. I have them throughout the chapter based off of various different chapters. Not on every single chapter, obviously, but sometimes it's hit or miss on what they are. This one is on God's presence and blessing and adversity. And it is by someone by the name of Gloria Furman. Okay, so this is on Genesis chapter 39, so I think this might be good for you guys to listen to. When we suffer adversity and our circumstances are bleak, we might wonder, where is God? Has the Lord turned his back on us? Has he forgotten us? Is God mindful of his promise to be with his covenant people and bless them? Genesis 12, 2-3. Joseph may have asked these questions when he was thrown into the pit and sold into slavery by his brothers, when he was accused of committing sins against the Lord and against Potiphar's house, and when he was left in the king's prison for many years. Did God forsake or forget the promises he had made? The evidence in the life of Joseph is abundantly clear. God's hand was present amid his adversity, and he meant it for good. So in verse 50-20, the Lord never left Joseph. Verse 39, chapter 39, 2-3, 21, and 23. And he blessed him and made him a blessing. The Lord was fulfilling his promise to bless the nation as he blessed the Egyptians for Joseph's sake. But when Potiphar's wife enjoyed abundant provision at the hand of God, she sought the destruction of God's servant through tempting him to sin and accusing him of evil. Again, like years earlier when his brother threw him into the pit, Joseph's garment was stolen for the purpose of deceiving others, yet God had ordained that all the nations would be blessed through his covenant people. His purposes could not be thwarted by this woman's accusations and lies. God's covenant people are still accused today, but the accusations of Satan, the one who tempts and deceives, hold no weight in God's holy throne. The blood of Jesus, who is the mediator of a new covenant, speaks on our behalf. Even if we have given in to temptation and seduction, the blood of Jesus cleanses those whose faith is in him. Through repentance and faith in Jesus Christ, those who were once far off have been brought near to God by his blood. The Lord was committed to Joseph, and Joseph was committed to the Lord. God's word leaves no room for doubt that the Lord was with Joseph. Believers in Jesus have this rock-steady assurance. As Christ dwells in our hearts through him, we are rooted and grounded in his love. As we are grounded in the love of God, he enables us to persevere through adverse circumstances and resist temptation to the praise of his name. in all the earth. God is with us in our trials, and He causes us to prosper in them as He shows us His steadfast love. So I thought that would be a good thing for you guys to know. But yeah, that is all I have for you guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a little rough coming back to the study. But don't get me wrong, I will continue trying to make my videos, especially my Bible studies, better and better, especially since I'm learning how to use this new tripod. Right now, I'm going to give you guys a real quick show. Like, see, I have the tripod literally right in front of me, so I am trying to, to be able to do this Bible study by also looking around the tripod here too. But there's got to be a better way for me to do this. Anyways, I'm not going to let you guys dwell too longer than this, but I will continue doing the Bible studies. I will finish this book eventually, and I'll try and make it a little more consistent for my next chapter going into 40. But as I said a little bit ago, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, if you guys want to add something on, go ahead and just comment below, and I will respond to them as best as I can, when I see it, whatever the case is. But yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.